On today's episode of the Real Recovery Podcast, episode 24, we welcome Robert Sanders, the grandson of Barbara Roberts, former governor of Oregon. Robert shares his journey through addiction and recovery, highlighting his challenges, triumphs, and the impact of his family's legacy. Join us for an inspiring conversation that showcases the power of resilience and community support. Stay tuned for an episode filled with hope and transformation.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Recovery Podcast. I'm Julie, your co-host. On this journey of healing and transformation, together with my co-host Peter, we dive into the heart of recovery, sharing stories that resonate with courage and inspiration.
That's right, Julie. Each episode is a new chapter in this vast narrative of recovery, and we're honored to bring them to you. But keep in mind, the perspectives you'll hear are for informational purposes only and may not reflect the views of the podcast or our partners.
Indeed, while these conversations can be a powerful part of your recovery toolkit, they are not substitute for professional medical advice. We encourage you to seek guidance from your healthcare provider for any treatment-related decisions.
And if you're facing an immediate crisis, or if you just need to talk to someone who understands, don't hesitate to call the Recovery Crisis Line at 503-223-8569. That number is also on our website. Help is available 24/7.
Now let's begin our episode
of recovery, real recovery.
Welcome to Real Recovery Podcast. This is Julie.
Peter.
And
Robert Sanders.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Welcome, Robert. Thanks for coming to my humble abode. This is the Studio H house.
No, it's a lovely home. Grateful to be able to come in and share my experience and what recoveries look like for me, and then anything else you guys want to know.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing your story. I don't know you. This is the first time I've met you, so Julie has a little bit of background, but tell us, you can begin, where you came from.
There's no wrong or right.
Yeah.
Our whole goal is if someone's struggling, they listen to our podcast, or maybe they're solid in their recovery. But we're hoping that if someone's struggling, they'll hear one of our stories and maybe take a foot in that direction.
Usually when I start to share, I like to start off by saying I was not the baddest dude out there. That's not my story, and I know we hear those stories a lot. I was thinking of my earliest memory on my way over, and it was walking through the Lloyd Center with my grandma at a young age. And a little backstory here, my grandma was the governor of this state from 91 to 94.
Oh, wow.
And so we would go to the Lloyd Center, and that's how we spent a lot of time together. And she would get stopped like every 15 feet. And so that was my earliest memory. And I remember her looking at me, and I would ask, hey, why do we have to stop? Why can't we just say, hey, we're busy? Just know we have to make time for the people that we serve. And so I held on to that lesson. That was one side of the coin for me when I was growing up, is I had a really structured and supportive environment there. But then on the other side of the coin, I also had a mother that was struggling with alcohol abuse. And so I got to see her struggles and structure from my dad's side. And I'm caught in the middle of trying to figure out, how do I navigate this? What is my identity in all of this?
Absolutely.
And as I grew up, my identity became more of, hey, you're Barbara Roberts' grandson. And I wasn't Robert Sanders. Nobody really knew me. They just attached me to this other person. And a bunch of behavioral problems started through grade school to middle school to high school, and started out with me getting, I think, suspended in first or second grade, held.
That's funny. I got in trouble in first grade too.
Held the record for referrals in sixth grade, which is the little notes they send your parents. And then by the time I made it to eighth grade in high school, I was smoking a lot of pot and drinking alcohol, and I had found a community of people that saw me for who I thought I was at that time.
Right.
But I wasn't attached to anybody else. You know, for me, the first time I ever drank, I was 6 or 7 years old, maybe 8. But I remember it was about midnight, and I walk into the bathroom in the middle of my house, and my mom had left a Coors Light on the back of the toilet. And at that time, I didn't really know what I was putting into my body. I didn't have any expectations on what it would feel like. But as soon as I got that first taste, I understood why my mom had chose that. Things got a little bit more calm for me. The edge was taken off.
Mm-hmm.
And that lesson, I feel like, propelled me to try other things throughout my formative years.
I know for me, growing up, it was anything that I could do to take me out of reality. So that it sounds a little bit similar, taking that edge off, taking you out of the limelight, if you will, of life.
Well, and I think too, about that same time I was just talking about, they were doing a whole bunch of tests trying to figure out what was going on with me. When I was growing up, they thought that there was maybe some hearing deficit that I had, when really it was my brain processes information a little bit slower than other people's, right?
Right.
And so they were looking to try and come up with a diagnosis that they could apply to me. And I remember one time my mom, we were going to some office to do one of these tests. And she told me, hey, they're going to put you on a bunch of meds, pretend you can't hear it. So I learned really early on not to have trust in systems or government or people outside of who my mom told me I could trust. And for me, I think that just paved the way of, okay, I'm just going to model the behavior that she's teaching me. I'm going to try to stay in her good graces. But it was really weird going from that environment during the week and then to a more stable one on the weekends with my grandma and my dad, who were great. And to be fair, I think my mom did the best that she could.
Right.
She's got her own story to tell. She's 10 plus years in recovery now and helping a lot of people. So I don't want to paint her too bad, but she was struggling with her own things at that time. And that has effects on us.
Yeah. We were just talking in the check-in, my aunt, it's my husband's aunt actually, but she just passed away and we went to a memorial for her and her children stood up and spoke. And they didn't hold back about her because when she passed, she was 29, I think it was, years sober.
Yeah.
But they talked about the time when she wasn't, and that's the reality. That's the reality of the people and the addiction.
Well, I think it's always, we never know the things that people remember, right? And so sometimes I'll hear a story from my dad or from my little sister or just other people from a period of time that I've completely erased. And so my hopes is, in sharing my story, I don't hurt anybody else, but we all created our own stories there.
Yeah.
I love what you said, just so you know, that you think she did the best she can. It took me a long time to get to that point. I was really upset about my childhood, and mine was the opposite. It was really good during the weekdays and jacked up on the weekend, and then it reversed. And coming to the realization, and my mom stopped drinking at 55. So she was like the flawless grandma to my child. So my child doesn't know that grandma, which is amazing, right? She was everything, but it took me a lot longer than most. It was one of the resentments I held true to my heart until just about a year and a half ago.
Well, I think that's one of the recovery. It's, I see the way that my mom is with my nephew now, my little sister's son, or actually two of them now. And then with my daughter, she's a good grandma. And so we get to overcome the things in the past that held us back. And for me, I look at all of these experiences and then the work that I'm doing today, and it's really what I feel like propels me to want to do this. A little snippet into what I do today is provide supervision and support to a team of peer mentors that specifically work with 14 to 17-year-old kids.
Oh.
And I think back at all those times when I was getting sent to the principal's office or seeing the guidance counselors. And for me, it's like, how do we establish a system where we use all of those things as checkpoints where we can get the kids the support that they need?
Before it gets bad.
Yeah.
We just talked about that
did.
on our check-in. Because when we were with Tony, that was the day he was signing the lease on I think it's 44 units or whatever. Yep. And having 32,000 underage people addicted in 40 beds. What a number, right?
Yeah. And so the average for last year was 36 treatment beds available. And we know that 1 in 10 kids struggles with alcohol use disorder. 1 in 5 young adults struggles with substance use disorder or is affected by it.
That I didn't know.
So the math just doesn't add up. And those 36 beds are counting beds that only accept private insurance. And so if we're talking about the people most impacted by the war on drugs, it's even less than that. And so I'm looking at the system today and I'm trying to figure out what to tell parents. And it's really hard when they come into the office and they're saying, hey, what can I do? What resources exist? And I don't really have an answer. And so that's my role today, is just trying to spread some awareness around that, trying to push some legislators and some state officials to make some positive change in that area. But we got a long ways to go. I am happy that Tony is really dedicated to making sure adolescents get the support that they need, but we're a long way out. And 4D recovery cannot be the only answer.
And to be clear for our listeners, you work at 4D
Yes.
recovery.
Yes, I do.
And we touched on that too a little bit, where we were talking about Fora Health and how they have a high success rate because, in fact, they have a clear path from A to B to get
With the detox, the mental health, the housing, not just I get you sober and bye.
Fora Health, I'm a product of Fora Health when it was Nepal. One thing that they do really well is work with community partners too.
Yes.
And so when I was graduating from Fora Health, they sent a referral over to CCC's mentor program, and then I got connected there. And then
Central City Concern?
Yeah, Central City Concern.
My God.
And then from there, I got connected with 4D Recovery as a participant. And when we don't operate in silos and we do the best for our clients or the people that we serve, outcomes go up. And so that's one thing I love about Fora, is the way that they took Go the Distance under their wing and worked with different housing providers. And Mike Hovey is just one of the all-time greats, in my opinion.
Mentor Mike.
Yeah.
I actually want him to be Meditation Mike and do some meditation spots on our show. But
should.
can I tell you, I was Izzy's sponsor at the time when GTD came for fruition. And I always tell him big head now, but it was so out of his soul, meaning he just wanted to take Daniel Torres running. And we had a meeting that we brought to my sponsor's house on Saturdays. And he kept changing the time of the meeting because of the running. And I was like, look, you're messing up my nail appointment. And truly, then I bought him his first shirt with the logo. And to see where that is now, I cried so hard at the Freedom Awards. I cried the entire ceremony almost.
No, that was beautiful. And Izzy's speech was pretty great.
It was. I tell him all the time. He was like, tomorrow night, if I forget somebody, I said, then you did the best you can, bro.
Yeah.
I said, please. I said, you're doing good things from the right place. And he's very active in our podcast. I heard a story from you, exactly. So it's not a story that at one time you got high at 4D. So how do we get from high school to the part in between what you do now?
Yeah.
Oh man, luckily I've already told 4D about this.
You told the whole class.
We're not outing you.
Yeah.
So from high school, you were...
Once I graduated high school, I was working at an ice cream shop in Tualatin. And back then, rent was cheap enough that I could do that and afford my rent. But eventually, I ended up losing my job. I got fired on Christmas Eve because I had been stealing money out of the till. I would take $20 here or there, and that supported my marijuana habit. And then, as any sane person does, I looked at my lease and I said, okay, how do I break this lease legally? And I decided to join the Navy.
There you go.
Wow, way to go. That's pretty smooth.
And so I can't say I had the best reasoning there. I also wanted some help paying for school, but I decided to join the Navy, and it was something that my sister had done. She joined the Army. My grandfather had done in the Army, and it was something that I wanted to experience and get away maybe from this area a little bit and continue developing that identity for myself. The problem is that once I got there, the community that I was involved with didn't really have the same ideals or political perspectives as I do. It was fairly right-wing, and I'm not. And so I felt very isolated in that space, which led me back to alcohol again, so I could connect with people and feel okay with my surroundings and the things that were being talked about. This was at the same time that President Obama was president, and I walked into the Chiefs Den one time, and they were talking about how he was such a socialist. And I looked at them and I said, he's a moderate Democrat. I'm a socialist. What are you talking about? and that kind of set off the rest of my naval career there. And it really made it so the only way I could connect with people was through drinking a ton of alcohol. 2 deployments later, I fell off a platform, hurt my shoulder, got sent home, and I got sent home with a pretty good prescription. And a few months go by and that prescription runs out. I'm dating a girl that I used to go to high school with, and I did not know at the time she was in recovery, nor did I know that she had just relapsed. But I was trying to go to work one day and I was feeling very sick. And she looked at me and she said, "Hey, I think she called it monkey snot. I have this monkey snot, and if you snort it, it'll take care of that sickness for you."
That was the first for me. I've never heard of monkey snot.
So it's like heroin and water mixed in a Visine bottle.
Yeah, no, I've never
okay.
heard of it, ever.
And so that was my introduction to heroin. And as soon as I felt it, I felt like I had figured out the secret to life.
Right.
And I remember sitting there talking with her and said, "I don't understand why people go through all this work when for $20 you could feel this feeling like this is it." And little did I know that over the next 3 years, my life would completely plummet. Any money that I had saved up was now gone. Criminal record was on there, which would prevent me from being able to teach. And for me, that was always a goal. I wanted to go back and teach social studies and be the mentor that I had in high school. And I didn't even touch on that, but there was one teacher I had in high school. His name was Sam Ford, and he was the only person that really challenged me and got me on track. Because my first year in high school, I got 7 credits. My second year, I got 12. I ended up having to get half my high school credits my senior year, and it was because one man was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Why don't?" And he found a way to motivate me into pursuing this, and I wanted to do that for somebody else. But anyway, that criminal record happened, and it was a possession of heroin charge, and I knew I would never be able to do that. And so for me, it was like, okay, I guess this is the life that I have now.
Right.
And I didn't really see any way out of it. The political climate at that time wasn't what it is now, where we're giving people second and third chances. It was, okay, this is what you are and this is what you're going to be. And everything was handled with a more punitive approach.
I had a lot of shame behind mine. Again, another thing I've dealt with. It took me a while, but I think I was so successful in my career to prove them differently. It's crazy because there is a stigmatism around it, and yeah, I can really relate, especially coming from your family and the atmosphere.
Well, that was one of the double-edged swords of it all too. I did. My grandma made sure that we had all the educational resources we would ever need. But when I was struggling with a mental health concern or a substance use disorder concern, I was always afraid that there would be another article in the Willamette Weekly about my family. And so I tried to minimize and hide it, and that prevented me from going and seeking help. And this was when the 90s, they did a story that my grandma went to the Dollar Tree, and it blew up, and it was such a big deal. And so I was thinking, okay, grandson is now a heroin addict. I didn't know what they would do with that.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, when I finally got help, they were nothing but supportive. Like they wanted me to do that for the longest period of time. But it was that self-imposed stigma that this was going to do something bad to my family that kept me hiding for so long.
Yeah.
Know that your family, yeah, amen.
Yeah. It's for me when I guess came out as an alcoholic, I came out as gay both times. I was in fear and it held back. And then the reaction I got was, "Yeah, we know. We're waiting for you to figure it out," kind of thing. And it's, oh shit, I could have gotten through this a lot sooner with a lot less pain.
My mother lied to her friends. She told them I got cancer. That's why I wasn't around, for real. And when I got home, I went to boot camp in prison, and everybody's, "You look really good. You look really good." And I was like, what the hell? And my mother's friend, I think the only person she told was like, "Your mom told everybody you have cancer." And I was like, what? Yeah, wow. She was that ashamed. So I wasn't allowed to talk about it or discuss it. And I was in prison with Jeff Gillooly, Tanya Harding's husband, and at the time. And the news cameras were there when we were running down to PT, and she was like, "You better not be on any camera."
Oh,
and I'm
boy.
like, I have no choice if they're there. And so I'm running to the cameras trying to have my hood on so nobody sees me.
I think that's a generational thing because my folks were always, what do the neighbors think? What will the neighbors think?
Yeah, her look good was more important than,
Yeah.
yeah.
One, I did a paper on ageism and addiction a couple years back, and that was one of the things. I interviewed my grandma and my older cousin about their experiences, and that was the way that they handled everything was, hey, that's family business. We don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful that it seems like we're getting away from that now.
Yes. That's exactly what this, not the whole point, but part of it is to get it out there that remove the anonymity. It had its place and it still does for people, but I think it's less and less important. It's more important to show that, yeah, I have this issue and there's hope for those who
What I
may think
really
there's
like now, right, and I think it's one of my favoriteest things about 4D is that your story is your credentials. You
Yeah.
know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
Where not mine. Okay, like I definitely wouldn't go to my boss and say, "Hey, I went to prison. I was an IV drug
But
user."
you opened up at an interview recently.
For the
said,
first
"This is
time.
who-"
I had somewhere to be. It was Izzy's birthday at 12 o'clock, and I didn't want to hear, "Bitch, you weren't there." And he called me and made sure I was going to be there. And I had an interview at 10:30, and I was like, I have public speaking to do at 12. And they asked me what I was speaking about, and I was like, I'm in recovery and for 27 years. And it was the first time ever through an interview I usually didn't mix the two.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we're at a time now where every family has been affected by it. They know somebody in their family. And I
Yes.
think when we share our story, one, that can inspire hope for whoever it is in their family.
Amen.
Exactly.
Or if it's them that we're talking to, that they might have the problem, maybe that gives them the courage to go and get the help that they need.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
That is so true. Like it is crazy. And for Izzy, your birthday was more important to me, just so you know.
For me, one of the transformative moments was I was still in DePaul at the time, and I was looking out the windows on that third story building, and I saw
The ugliest building in the world downtown.
it was such a foul building. But anyway, I was looking out the windows and I saw Oregon Recovers marching down the street. And I asked one of the residential counselors, what are they doing? When I saw signs talking about recovery, and I was like, people are really out there saying this stuff? Okay. And then I got linked up with Mike Marshall a little bit later, and I started to watch him, and I started to watch guys like Tony Vesna, and I realized I no longer have to hold this thing back anymore.
Yes.
Look,
Exactly.
amen. I feel the same way. And I will tell you, it has been, and I don't want to cry, but because of my professional career at like Sprint, I had a lot of employees, and my boss was cool at Sprint, but the atmosphere that I'm in now is not very diversified and stuff. And I feel like I'm the only of everything. But it's crazy that it was when Amanda spoke at True Colors and Tony introduced her and talked about her prison sentence. And then she was the director. That was the first time I was like, wouldn't that be cool? And it's like taking off a mask,
Yeah.
the look good mask. And then the first night when we did our first podcast and then we each did our story, I felt so naked to
Yeah.
the world for the very first time. It was cool in AA meetings. I had no problem. I was 100% honest. But to the whole world
Yeah.
When
is a different story.
I'm a big believer that the lessons that we learn in AA or NA or CA, HA, any of them, are preparing us to take those lessons and those virtues out into the real world. If that's being humble, open, and transparent, open-minded and willing, being of service, like all of those things are supposed to be qualities that we bring out to the community. And I know historically we have not been able to do that as much, but I'm so grateful today. You can go into an interview and you can be yourself.
First time ever. When I worked for one company for 19 years, the cool thing about that was my boss, I was only 4 years sober when I started there. But on Fridays, I'd be like, going to my meeting. And my sponsor celebrated his 95th birthday at Sprint. So it was real cool. But I still didn't post it on my Facebook. I kept everything separate. I don't have employees on my Facebook. So it was just, this has been like a 2-year, like the awakening. I went to IOP at 25 years sober, which most people are going there because I got a DUI. And I went there because I had worked too much, had a little breakdown. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
No, I mean, that's perfect. That's what we need to normalize, is being able to get help when you need it.
Right.
Yeah.
I was 13 months sober when I went into my doctor and I said, "Hey, this is what I'm feeling. I need help." And I wasn't really thinking about getting loaded at that time, but I needed help dealing with some depression, and they were able to get me into some groups, and I was eventually able to get off the sertraline or whatever it was called. But it started by being able to walk in and say, "Hey, this is where I'm at."
Yeah.
Citrulline, a.k.a. Zoloft.
Yep.
That's what they gave me. No, I agree with you. This time when I took a leave, the anxiety came back pretty hard. A thyroid helped it. It exploded. But it's crazy. I knew what to do this time. But shout out to my doctor, because she's the one who forced me to go to the psychiatrist. And she would not let me go back to work until I went to IOP. And at that time, we were just coming out of COVID. And so there was a wait. I waited 12 weeks to get in with good insurance. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where we need to have more services available.
This time I knew where to go because, like you said, I was feeling a little wonky.
Yeah.
No, and I could feel it. I was crying, and I was in a not healthy relationship, and that was a lot my brain couldn't handle at the time. But the good thing was I learned so much the first time and learned so much this time. And that and this platform have really helped me, I don't know, share and heal.
Yeah.
Like I feel more healed than I ever have.
When you, how did you get into DePaul?
I was staying at a hotel on 92nd and Flavel called Del Rancho or something like that.
I know exactly which hotel you're talking about.
And one night I was there. I was alone. The woman that I told you guys about earlier that introduced me to
Monkey
Monkey
snot.
Snot.
Monkey Snot.
She had passed away from an overdose. It was about a year later. And I'm just sitting in this hotel room and I don't have anybody else that I can blame for the shortcomings of what's happening in my addiction or the hard times or anything like that, why my hustle's not working. And I'm just sitting there alone and I get on Facebook Messenger. I invite somebody over and she says, "Hey, this doesn't seem to be working for you. Like, why don't you try something different?" On her walk over, she also gets followed by two people and I go out there and I'm wielding a knife and pretending like I know what I would do with it. But I just realized in that moment, like, this has taken me to a spot that I'm not supposed to be. And I can no longer do it.
Clarity. Amen.
And so my friend is back in the sorry. My friend is back in the hotel room with me and she says, "Who can you call?" And so I called my older sister and I don't know why, but she picked up the phone this time. And the next morning I went around and I paid off everybody that I had borrowed money from or had business with. And I ended up making it to DePaul Treatment Center at 4:16 p.m.
Wow.
Now, they told me that they stopped doing intakes at 4 o'clock. And so my sister came and picked me up. And by the next morning, she had prepared basically a kidnapping of me from her house. So some big, like 6'3" dude, name is David S., came and picked me up from her house and dragged me down to DePaul and waited with me until they let me in.
Wow. That's awesome.
And I don't really know how it happened. There was a moment of clarity, and then there was a lot of people working the phones trying to figure out a way for me to get in.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the person who said this isn't working for you?
No, I send her a message about once a year checking in to make sure she's still alive. She's still out there.
See?
Yeah. But no, I won't go see. I
No,
can't go see her.
I don't
but-
do that either.
But I send her a message, and I've tried to get her into Hooper and DePaul, and there's a little bit of trauma there for that person to seek those options, which I'm hoping we can find a way to alleviate at some point. But yeah, no, I don't get to see that friend anymore.
I was just curious because what an angel at the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's crazy. I don't hang out with anybody that fucks around. Yeah. And I had a hard time recently. Peter will tell you. I was pretty messed up over it, but one of my clients was a very political person. And when I got in trouble, I didn't release any information. I'm not Stormy Daniels getting paid. Not that I would have done that. But anyway, it was hard. It was really hard because I hadn't seen anybody from then. And seeing the story, it was
Resurface, yeah, after all that time.
I was,
Bring you right back to the day.
I was like, Peter, this is fucking me up. Yeah. And it was, no one wants to remember some of that stuff. But yeah, they were, yeah.
Well, it's hard because one of my best friends from that period of time, I remember he messaged me at my 6 months sober, and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I told him, "Hey, I got a place. I'm doing well. I'm building my recovery stuff." And this was a person who had taken charges for me. I had taken charges for him. This was a person that I considered my brother out there. And he messaged me back after I told him I had been doing well, and he said, "Hey, if you ever want to change that, hit me up." And that was the lesson for me that, you know what, like,
You can't go back.
I
You don't want to go
can't
backwards.
go back.
Yeah.
And they didn't ever give a shit anyway. Right. It was a transactional relationship.
I know what you mean. Luckily, when I was on parole, I had to check in with the parole officer. And I had to be subject for a polygraph test. And so one of the conditions of my parole was I could not hang out on 82nd. Not that I ever was on fucking 82nd or Sandy Boulevard. Not that I was ever on fucking Sandy Boulevard. They should have said like the Benson and whatnot, because I really considered myself high class. Even though
high class whore.
Exactly. Even though Jack said I was a homeless hoe, right? But no, because I stayed in expensive hotels, right? And whatnot. But I don't know. I always tell someone, and I've only ran into 2 people, I'll be at this meeting. If you want to meet me or see me, I'll be at this meeting. So if you show up to the meeting, we're in a safe atmosphere.
Right.
But I can't give you my phone number. I can't give you anything else. And it's been really good for me. Yeah. And I had to let go of my best friend of 10 years when we lost our job to the T-Mobile Sprint merger. And this was my guy. And he met this girl. And
that's
and
what
I
it
had
always
to
is.
Yeah, and I had to tell him, dude, if you fuck around, I can't fuck around with you. And it was like we spent holidays together, which is why I come to Peter's house now so that I'm safe and sober. Mm-hmm.
My mom used to always tell me about the yets, right? So as my disease progressed, there was a period of time where I went and I moved back into my mom's house, and I would try to justify being a heroin user because I wasn't shooting up, and she'd look at me and she'd say, "Yet," or
"Yeah,
I always weigh it out first. I know exactly how much I can take without overdosing." And she said, "For now."
Until the strain changes.
Right. And all those yets ended up getting bypassed over a period of time. But it's just funny because when you were talking about the Benson, those are the things we'll hold on to that make us feel better in those moments and make it seem okay.
Yes.
But really, if we continue down this road, we will end up on 82nd.
Well,
you know?
I always thought, and this has changed recently, it was with Jack, this guy we did a podcast on. And Jack said, "No, girl, you was just a homeless hoe." And I was like, no, I was an escort. Like, it was classier, even though we did the same thing, right? And I did. That was part of my uniqueness, I think, which is huge thinking error. And I also thought, being in a gay men's meeting, right? None of them had my story, and none of them had been to prison, and none of them owned an escort service, and they didn't get arrested with $250,000. So I thought I was fucking special as fuck. And as Jack reduced it to 2 words, I was like, "You're not that unique." Yeah.
Oh, that's Bobby T, my counselor for intensive outpatient. One of the first things he asked me was, "When was the last time you had your own place?" And I said, "Well, I stayed at a whole bunch of places." It's like, "Yeah, but like, when was the last time your name was on a lease?" Shoot, 7 years ago? He's, "Oh, you've been homeless for 7 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, crap. And I had to come to terms with that reality because, I could always backroom deals and figure out a place, but...
I stayed at It's not there anymore, so I don't feel bad. But I stayed at the Carriage Inn. And the special thing about the Carriage Inn, because remember, pages were just being invented and cell phones were just getting there. Pages were invented, but cell phones were just when I got in trouble. But the Carriage Inn had a 1-bedroom with a living room and a kitchen and a bathroom. And each phone number was for that room. So you didn't have to go through the switchboard. So that was like so much better. If you were in room 103, it would be 2103. And if you were in 106, it would be 2106, the numbers. And you can't work the escort service and have all your fucking calls from the service going through the switchboard. You can't have your drug dealer calling back through the switchboard. And we paid back then like $135 a night. But it was like our apartment. When we stayed there, I think about it now, it kills me how much money we spent there because I lived there I wasn't homeless, but I didn't have a leasee there. Yeah, it's crazy shit, but that's how we thought.
I would like to, if you're open to it, you to share how you then continued through, just to give someone who's on the other still looking at this going, wow, how do I get to the other side?
Well, I want to start off first by saying, even in that moment where I was sitting in that hotel room, I didn't know that I actually wanted to be sober for the long term. And for my first 6 months, I went back and forth on whether or not this was going to be a long-term thing for me. I knew, so my sister was really sick, and I knew I wanted to be able to be present for her. And then I knew I wanted my family off my back to a degree. And so these two, and I knew that if I went into DePaul, my probation officer would get rid of the warrant. So there was a couple different motivating factors that I had. And when I went there, I was just trying to learn what I could and not really cause too much of a ruckus in the process. But I would ask questions and I was honest with people. And I remember I went to a meeting at the Alano Club while I was still at DePaul and I said, hey, when I graduate from DePaul, I'm just going to go back to this house over here. And one of my friends looked at me and said, do you think that's a good idea? And we had a conversation, talked through it, and I said, you know what, you're right, that's not a good idea. And so I had to be humble enough to look to other people and get their opinions on what I was doing prior to taking action. And I think that's been the thing that's pushed me as far as it has in a relatively short period of time. I've only been sober 6 years, and my life looks a lot different than it did. But, okay.
Only 6 years. That's fucking amazing. It's not only 6 years.
No, I don't mean it like that.
It's one day at a time.
That's all I have. It is one day at a time. I think starting out just at a place of humility, understanding, okay, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to get opinions from other people. And it's okay to get another level of help after the residential treatment stay. So I went to supportive housing and intensive outpatient, which bought me, I want to say, another 9 months of just treatment.
Now, was this something that was suggested, or did you have to seek it out, or was your path?
So it was a fate thing. So I was up at the front desk saying, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And on the printer, there was a flyer for the mentor program. And I said, hey, I want that. And then we took it to my counselor's office at DePaul and he said, okay, I'll send the referral over. And then a couple weeks later, Chet C comes up and says, hey, I got a spot for you, but I need you to stay here for the next week and I need you to call me every day. And so I did those things. And then once I got into the mentor program, I didn't stay out after curfew. I didn't use. I was told that by going to a meeting every day, that's how I paid my rent. And so I just followed all those things and I really held on to this belief, hey, I don't want to end up back in that hotel room again. Yeah. And I continued to develop it. About 6 months, my life was starting to look a little bit smoother. I was in a relationship, had a relationship with my daughter, and my dad and I were talking and things were starting to come back together a little bit. And I just used that. And I said, okay, if I can get 6 months, I can get 1 year. And then once I got to 1 year, I said, okay, I did that. I can get 2 now. And there were definitely days where I had to go back to just for today or just for the next 15 minutes. But every single time that I've got a certain amount of time, I've known, okay, I can do that again.
Amen.
And so no matter what life throws at me, last October, my sister passed away. And no matter what life throws at me, I know that I have a toolkit to make it through those difficult emotions. And so today it's just Okay, do I pick up the phone? Do I call a trusted person in recovery? Do I seek guidance? Do I go talk to Tony and Cody at 4D and tell them what I'm actually going through so
I
they
love it.
know, that my work might look a little different for a month or two or however long it takes?
Right.
Do I go and say, I'm not okay today? Can I have the day off? And I
love
think
that.
just getting the confidence in myself to be able to walk into a room and say, hey, I'm not okay.
We were talking about that before you came. So first of all, I am a part of the No Matter What Club. Okay, period. Like nothing, there's no circumstance that's going to make me do that. Okay, I am not sticking a needle in my arm again.
Fuck that.
Okay, period. And I am confident about that. I do have a hard time staying in one day at a time sometimes, though I will say through IOP, I've gotten much better at it. I've also gotten much better at flipping stuff.
Yeah.
Like being proud of my journey. Like instead of being ashamed of prison, I'll be out of prison 30 years this fucking year. How many people get to do that? Right. And even I went through a bad breakup, which led me to do even worse stuff before I got in trouble. And that person saved my life. They stayed out there using 12 more years than I did. If they hadn't broke up with me, would have gotten sober
Right.
sooner, right? So like flipping it, the bad stuff to what it could be, you know what I'm saying, is amazing. But I love the fact that you can say, I do it all the time. I do it in an AA meeting, but I'll say, I'm having a hard time today. Just because I have a lot of sobriety doesn't mean there's not hard days.
No. And
Like life is not easy.
Right.
That's why you cherish the good moments, right? You deal with the bad, but it's not. And recovery is not an easy path. Using is the easy fucking way out.
Well, I think I talked about it in a CRM training I did recently. It's like our brain, I view our brain as almost a highway system, right? And the more often that we drive down I-5, the more programmed it is into our head. That's the way we solve every problem that we face. And as we're entering into recovery, we're developing these different off ramps, We're developing these different off ramps, and there's a lot of wreckage on those roads. There's a lot of trees. There haven't been any paving crews through in a long time. And we're having to develop different skill sets like picking up the phone and really staying attached to a community and putting that pen to paper and looking at the history of why the trauma that should be small right here is affecting us so deep because it resembles something that we went through back there.
Yeah.
That's the one that kills me sometimes. I didn't really have a lot of past memories the first 20 years, right? It wasn't until I had I call it a mental breakdown. I had worked too much. I was emotionally exhausted, spiritually exhausted, physically sick. My eardrum had burst. And that's when my doctor made me go to IOP. But then the memories.
Yeah.
And it was just from a doctor's sent me to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist asked me questions no one had ever asked me, and I was like, what the fuck? And dealing with that shit, thank God I was sober so long, right? Because I don't think I could have done it in the beginning. So God gives you what you can handle at the time, but it's crazy. And I had the 6-month plan too.
Yeah.
The 6-month plan to get off parole, just go to meetings until then,
I
get
thought it was-
everything off my back, and I stayed.
And there was a part of me that thought it was setting myself up for the best run ever.
Yeah.
I legitimately had that belief for a minute, but
I got scared.
I was really grateful that I got connected with some people that held me accountable and that made that decision harder than
Yeah, they loved me.
staying sober. And my sponsor told me early on, he's like, okay, so you like to get high on the weekend. I like to get high every day. But I was talking to him and he said, it sounds like if you were going to relapse, it'd be on like a Friday night because you could get away and have a clean UA by Monday. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. So he told me, okay, take a service commitment at Burnside Blues at 7:30 because your curfew is 10 o'clock. Okay, eliminated that option.
That's like, I take a service commitment to Zoom host, right? So that no matter what, I have to be in a meeting when I went back to work. This way I'd have to be in a meeting no matter spiritually.
Symbols. Okay. I think that was part of I had the same fears about I'm putting myself out naked. Like I'd rather stand on a stage butt naked than put my story out there as honestly as I did. But also in a way, it's like, what would I do now if I took a drink? Holy crap, what I'm doing, this podcast and stuff, I'd ruin everything, right?
And you're the phoneless guy. You'd fuck up the phoneless, man.
The phoneless guy. Yeah.
Roger would kill you.
But yeah, talk about putting those stop gaps in place.
Yeah.
And
I have a lot of those
having
now.
the foresight to do it ahead of time too, I think is brilliant.
It was brilliant.
And yeah, maybe it's someone who you're talking with, or maybe it comes to you yourself. For me, when I think about, like, there's times when I was drinking and my car would just swerve into that liquor store. And before I know it, I'd be home and there's the bottle on the counter. I'm like, I don't really remember how I got that there, but hell, it's there now, right? And that goes through my head sometimes, and I get such a panicky, sick feeling about it because I know what that would lead to, and I keep those memories fresh. So for me, it's keeping those memories of the state that I was in at the lowest point of my addiction.
Yeah. I remember you were talking about the car and it just going to the liquor store. I remember it was 5 a.m. May 1st, 2nd, somewhere around there of 2018. And that morning I ended up walking down to the Mac station from my sober house. And the whole time I'm thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I shouldn't be doing this. Wanting to turn around and stop. And I end up getting on that Max, riding it down to Gateway, riding it out to Gresham, walking up to the dealer's house, going back to the sober house, completely loaded and getting caught. But it was just every step in that process, I did not want to be on that road. And I couldn't stop it.
It's like an autopilot. It just took over,
And I don't ever want to give up that control over my own life again.
Right. It brings me to a state of panic. It really does. It's just, yeah. I guess that's what stops me.
I'm so scared of drugs now. I've never done fentanyl. I'm scared. I am seriously scared. And I'm glad it's a healthy fear. I used to know who made the meth because I would buy it in large quantities because I had the money. But I'm scared. And then I see people in our group die. And there really is 3 outcomes: jail, prison, death, or recover. It's A, B, or C.
That's similar to one of the things I say when I'm working with people too. There's 3 options for me if I go out and get loaded today. The first option is I instantly regret it. Second option, I can't stop and I absolutely love it. And then the third one is I die. And I don't all 3 of them just sound pretty crappy. And you're right. Like, one thing I'm really grateful is the heroin doesn't exist anymore because my drug of choice is now gone. But I'm also afraid because I know...
What do you mean heroin's gone?
Heroin does not exist anymore. Fentanyl has taken over everything.
I'm telling you, I'm out of the loop, which is a really good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so your methamphetamine has fentanyl in it now too. Like,
that I knew because you can cut it and make twice as much money. That I knew. They say it's the most powerful drug that's ever existed, period.
Yeah. And what they're calling heroin today is just brown sugar with fentanyl mixed into it with no scientific method or regulation.
Wow.
The way that they're pressing those little oxys is they take a plastic board with holes in it, credit card, and drag the substance over it. Whatever falls in and gets pressed is whatever falls in. And so that's why you can test half of a pill and then the other half be that lethal dose.
It's crazy.
It's completely changed the game. And that's the part that scares me for the kids is that
You don't know.
you don't know. And I think if you look at our generation, there's different levels of stigma, right? So for when I was growing up, we knew heroin and meth were pretty bad. We intrinsically knew that because we pictured people with needles shooting up. With the age of fentanyl, now things being pressed into a pill, it just has a different effect. And so what I hear is that they don't really view the blues as bad as other substances that are out there, even though that's the one that's really killing people right now.
Right.
It is.
I think the monkey snot sounds fun. No, I'm just kidding.
I've never heard of that in my whole life.
I never found anybody else
Hashtag
that
monkey
did it.
snot. I'm just
I
kidding.
never found anybody else that did it, but shoot.
I've heard of people doing stuff using the Afrin bottles. I've heard of that. I don't know exactly what they put in there but yeah.
Shit,
I've
I
heard-
used Afrin when I had COVID. They told me to use it for 3 days. It would help with the breathing. That's like, oh my God. They're saying now weed is laced with it too, which is just crazy.
And most of the time, the response I get back when I say that is, well, yeah, but people can go buy it from the dispensary. And then my response to that is, not the kids. So the
Yeah.
kids, the supply that they're getting is coming from somebody.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I don't think the solution to that is to allow kids to buy it from a store either. I don't know what the solution is. But fentanyl has completely changed the game. And I'm happy that the anonymous fellowships have got more open-minded to naloxone or not naloxone, but Suboxone for the past couple years because
MAT treatment.
Yeah, MAT, because we were pushing people out of the rooms for a long
I
time.
learned about that in your class. I knew that people getting off heroin went on methadone, right? I knew about Suboxone, but I didn't know it was called medication addiction treatment. And I didn't know that people are more successful if they do that for 2 years versus just whatever. I also think, and I voted wrong, I'll admit it, because I did well. In the last treatment place I went to, the lady told me, Julie, you're always going to be an addict, but I believe you stand a chance. And I had, 18 months in between. And she said, you need to find a meeting, and you need to find a meeting you like and stay there. Next day, parole officer said, get your slip signed. But because of the treatment experience and me being successful, right? I thought, they get caught, send them to treatment.
Yeah.
Hell no. Okay, there's not enough treatment places available. And now I feel like you need the fucking time out, right? Until you can get into treatment because there's not something always available or have treatment available in.
When you say you voted wrong, were you talking about Measure 110?
110, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cold part about Measure 110 is that it created absolutely zero treatment beds, and they sold it as a treatment bill. It was a decrim bill. It was not a recovery bill.
No, I agree with you. I'm just telling you, and then seeing it at bus stops and every place else. I live off Division, and 1 block from my house is Special Sauce. You can't see it from my house, but you can only go one way on Division, so you have to go through it. And it's exploded, and it's just, I don't know. I'm grateful for the timeout.
Yeah,
No,
I needed it to stay alive numerous times.
So from that, and you talked about how you got through DePaul and were able to continue on. In between that time and where you're at now, and how did you get to where you're at now? And then I do want to hear, we're getting close to some time, but I want to hear about what you do today. So if you can give us that
So one
link.
of the things my mentor, Chet, and my mentor, Adrian, both instilled in me was this goal-oriented approach. And so they would have me write 3 things that I want to accomplish onto a whiteboard. And then the questions that I would ask myself when I was getting ready to make a decision on anything was, hey, does this get me closer to that goal or not? And that's how I operated and still operate. And so every time I accomplished something, I would scratch that one out, put another thing up on that whiteboard. And that's the first thing. The second part of it is I watched a lot of videos from different people. One of them was Kobe Bryant. He was talking about when he first entered the league and he went to Goat Mountain. And he went to Larry Bird and Michael Jordan and all
my man, Larry Bird, but okay.
and all these figures in the NBA that made up the GOATs. And he asked them for help and studied their game and got advice. And so I realized if I did that 1, 2, and 3 of goals, and then under those goals had, okay, here's the resources, here's the people that are experts in this area.
Love that.
I'm going to go study them on it. And I'm going to go download all the information that I can get from them on it. And then the other thing is I just try to stay in this space where I'm rooted in gratitude. I understand that the reality I get to live in today is through a grace that was unmerited and undeserved. And so my role today is to reflect that grace onto other people. And so I don't really care what it is that works for people. I just want to help them get closer to whatever that is for them. And then just remembering every day, there was a time when I didn't have connection to anybody, anything, any sense of purpose. And today I am very lucky to be able to wake up and have a mission that I truly believe in, have people around me that truly value me, and remember that gratitude is an action word. And so if I say that I'm grateful for something, I'm going to take action to defend it and to protect it and to continue on that mission. And so that's been it, is just trying every day to be the best version of myself, realizing some days I'm going to fall short, accepting those moments, but learning from them.
Yeah. Listeners, there's your outline for success.
I write a gratitude list every day. There's 3 people I send it to no matter what. And 2 of them I just met in the last year. I started it when I went back to work from my OP so that it kept me centered. And now when I receive them, I'm like, yeah, I think it is a place. And I think, I don't know about you, but anything I'm going through today is better than shooting up in a hotel. Anything.
I read a lot of the Just for Today meditation. There's another book by Melody B. I can't remember her last name right now, talking about our attachments to other people. Goodness gracious, I cannot remember the book title right now, but I read a lot of those ones too, because I'm a person that also struggles with my attachments to other people, my codependency. There we go. I was just constantly looking at myself and then really listening to my wife. That has been the biggest tool I've learned, because she knows me better than I know myself some days. So she can tell when I'm not okay.
I love that.
And then not getting defensive and just giving her the ability, or not the ability, but I don't know.
No, that's good. So 4D, what do you do? What's your day like?
It depends on the day. My current role, I supervise anything that has to do with adolescent services at 4D. And that started out early on as developing policies and procedures and building out a program, creating the intake forms and all that stuff. And then hiring the staff and training them on it.
Wow.
Nowadays, I'm mostly there to provide feedback and guidance to the staff that are really doing the real work. And so I want to give a big shout out to that team out there right now. I do get lucky to be able to go in and spend time with the kids and use some of my experience in person with them. But that isn't really my day-to-day role anymore. Now it's like walking around and saying, hey, we have a big problem over here. We need more points of intervention in the system. We need more beds available. And then looking back at my team and just really giving them guidance on what the best practices are in providing the service.
For those that hear what you're doing and are learning about 4D through our interviews, for me, I get like real passionate. What can I do? How can I help? How can people help? What can they do? How can they help you guys be even more successful?
And we do have a link on our page and our website to 4D.
I think if it's other community partners, great. We want to work with you. Please email me so we can set up a meeting so we can figure out the best way to support our community. If it's people looking for support, we have a referral form on our website and somebody will reach out in 48 to 72 hours.
Click that site. Yeah.
And then I want to rewind a little bit too and just say, in general, what you'll get when you walk into 4D is a community space that is safe for you to be you. We started out serving young adults that were seeking recovery, that were looking for a place that they could hang out and have a good time at as a sober alternative to the bar scene.
Right.
And over time that grew into providing one-on-one peer mentor services where we were able to figure out what your goals are and what you want to accomplish. And so we do a bunch of fun events. We have a bunch of meetings. If you're an adolescent, we provide a lot of food.
Can I tell you, food goes a long way.
Yeah,
it really does.
Incentive,
I think that's
if I ever heard one.
And I think the thing that makes our space really unique is that it's powered by this recovery activities committee. At each center, there's a weekly meeting where the community members come in and they say, hey, this is what color that wall should be. Hey, this is what that next event should look like. Hey, this is what we want to see. And then our role is just to break that down and make it manageable and attainable for them. Yeah. And so when you look at kids, every single system that they're involved with, whether it's at their house, whether it's in the school system, whether it's at a formal treatment place, they're getting told what to do. And here we're just like, hey, here's some guidelines. Here's some boundaries to keep you safe.
Right.
We're going to keep you centered on recovery, but let's make this your space. Let's make this your house.
Well, recovery has to be as attractive as your addiction was sometimes to keep it there. And you have to realize there can be so much fun. Like we're lucky. We do a lot of fellowship and we're blessed in that way. But I think for somebody younger, they don't necessarily know how bomb it can be.
Yeah.
Like I go back to my time at 4D as a client, and I didn't even know really what I was doing at first. All I knew was this cool guy would come and pick me up 3 days a week, and we'd go to the gym and we would play basketball. And then we had our own basketball team that played in the Portland City League. And every single time after the game, he would drive us home, and he was asking us, hey, what's our goal for the week? I didn't realize he was setting us all up with this mind state to get us to keep looking and setting goals and building on all of these things.
Yeah. Girl, that would have worked for me. My Celtics, no, just saying.
I sure didn't want to go to an office. And so just having services that could be delivered in a way like that
is the way to go. What's attractive.
One of the things that I love about True Colors is that it's like a club, a sober alternative, because for the LGBTQ community, that the bars were the only place back when I was young. That was the only place to meet other people, to get to know other people. That was the scene. That was it.
And I went to True Colors the first time because they were having 50 licks ice cream.
There's an incentive.
It's true. I met a bunch of my crew from the lunch bunch, and that's the night I met Amanda and Tony, and there was a drag show, and it was a fun time. We went out to dinner too, so it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pulling from the big book, the AA big book, we are not a glum lot.
Right.
It's one of my favorite lines, because I thought, oh, Peter, your fun is over. It's done. You got to get sober, because at least through that lens I had at the time, all my good times and high moments were with drinking, drinking with the friends.
True Colors, it holds a really special place in my heart, because you look, like you said, you look at the community, and there's not a lot of spaces, even today, where the LGBTQ2I plus community can feel safe or accepted or be themselves.
Yeah.
Other than bars and 80s bathhouses. But it doesn't exist. And I'm really hopeful that as True Colors grows and all these different culturally or affinity specific based services grow, we will start to see people develop communities where they can truly be themselves. And that's the ultimate goal. And I love Amanda. She's the absolute best person for that job.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved meeting with her and getting to know her a little bit. Yeah.
I love True Colors too. I think it's great. But I have to tell you, as we've gotten to know all different places, each one of them has really opened my heart. Mm-hmm. And even though we do Recover Tour with Skylar, he opened my heart in a different way. And when he said he was at Paranoia Park, I was telling Peter, I was like, holy shit. That used to be my park too.
Yeah, if anybody's hearing this and didn't listen to Skylar's story, he's definitely got one.
Yeah.
Down to the name of his record label.
He's got a new song out, Pray. He's just, oh my God, he's fun.
Well, before we close completely, I did want to know, what is on your whiteboard for your 3 goals today?
Yeah, I love that when it's not.
So, everything was really career-based for the past several years, and going through some of the stuff that I mentioned that's happened in my family over the last year, they've changed a little bit. One of the goals that's on my list is really being present for the next 10 years of my daughter's life. She's 12 right now, and I want to make sure I don't miss out on these years. The second goal is making sure that this program launches, that we do get more treatment beds for the kids, and that I use any kind of platform that I have to continue talking about that until people get tired of me and do something. And then the third one is just to remain a loyal husband to my wife. And I don't mean loyal as in extramarital stuff, obviously that, but loyal as in really cherishing her every single day and believing in her the way that she's believed in me, because she saw this version of me that was fairly successful when I was down and out with nothing to my name, couldn't walk on my feet. She's seen that person for a long time before I even thought it was a possibility for myself.
Yeah. Isn't that
she's a
fantastic?
keeper.
It's people like her. My husband's the same way. He saw me at my darkest time, and we've been together 24 years. So he's been through it all. And the fact that he's still here today, and yeah, I have so much, how to put it in words, but yeah, he's very dear to me. And
I do want to say too, in case my wife listens, that list is in no way in any order.
I love that. Make it clear.
But
no,
it is.
that's awesome.
When we find our partners that really are the ones for us, I don't think there's anything better than that.
No, definitely. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
taking the time to be on our show. Really appreciate it. And this was a pleasure.
Thank you.
There's no words, but I'm really grateful. Gratitude is my basis as well. And I liked your first goal as well as your third goal, because I worked really hard, but only 6 to 2:30 as a single parent. My daughter's father died, and he was in DePaul too. But I never missed a basketball game, a softball game, a water polo game. And I didn't jump on the career. I had a good career, but I didn't become an operations manager until she went to college. And we're super close, and I value that more than anything.
I think, if I look at where I'm going to have the most impact, it's going to be with that little girl before anything else. And that doesn't mean I care any less about the work that I'm able to do, but
you can do both successfully.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. This is Julie from the Real Recovery Podcast.
Here with Robert Sanders signing off. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks to each and every one of you for lending us your ears and hearts. Your engagement is what fuels our passion and keeps this podcast thriving.
We cherish the moments we share here and hope they resonate with you, whether you're on a daily commute, at the gym, or just taking a moment for yourself.
Make sure to head over to our website at realrecoverypodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to our newsletter for the latest insights and uplifting stories from our community delivered straight to your inbox.
Click that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player too, so you can keep up with every new episode. It's your support that keeps our conversation alive and meaningful.
And if our stories have touched you, consider using the donate button on our site. Your contributions, no matter the size, are deeply appreciated. They help us continue our mission of sharing hope and healing.
Join us beyond the podcast and follow our journey on social media. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. All the links are on our site, so you can stay connected and be a part of the Real Recovery community every day.
Your likes, shares, and comments not only spread the message of recovery, but also remind us that we're all in this together.
So, until we meet again, remember that recovery is a journey, not a destination, and we'll be here to accompany you every step of the way to recovery, real recovery.
Thanks for listening.